Hello and welcome to this webinar for Year 11 Narrative Writing, Mastering Grade 9. We have three key learning aims for this session. First of all, understanding the marking criteria for narrative writing at Grade 9. Second of all, the effective characterization at Grade 9. And then finally, using the narrative arc at Grade 9. All this comes with a warning. Grade 9 is a notional grade. As you know, it's the top grade and it's defined by exam boards. Exam boards define exactly what grade 9 is, but by the end of this session, you will understand what you need to do to feel confident about gaining the top mark. Now, this is for a specific assignment. Write a story about a journey. So we're looking at a specific assignment to help you feel secure about mastering grade 9. Now, what does grade 9 mean? Well, for grade 9, it means that your writing is compelling. That means your readers are fascinated, they are engaged, they don't want to stop reading. And even this examiner, who has several hundred papers to mark, is excited and engaged and compelled to carry reading your story. Your narrative, your story is clever, it's original, it's imaginative, it's inventive and creative. That means you find unique ways of telling old stories. That means you have clever ways of expressing your ideas about characters and events. It also means that in recent years that you're gaining 36 marks out of 40 for your writing. If it's AQA, paper 1, section B, which is fiction writing, that's 90% of the grade, roughly, for grade 9. Now, this also means, in terms of the marking criteria and the marking scheme, that you're working at the upper level 4. Now, again, this comes with a warning because, as you know, the grade is created by the mark scheme, and from year to year, there may well be changes in the grade boundaries. Let's look at the marking scheme. Now, you may well be aware already that for AQA, you're assessed for two different aspects. You're assessed for content and organisation, which I call CAVES, communication, appropriateness, vocabulary, engagement and structure. And you're also assessed for technical accuracy, which I call VSPAG. So vocabulary, sentences, spelling, punctuation and grammar. And you can see, to gain the 36 marks out of 40 or 90%, roughly, which is around the grade 9, or it has been for AQA for the past few years, you'll need to be attaining 21, 22, 23, so the top in level 4, and 13, 14, 15, really to secure that grade 9. So it's right there at the very top of the grade bound for of the mark scheme. What does that look like in practice then? Let's talk about CAVES, content and organisation. It means that for your story, for your journey story, it will be stylishly expressed with inventive description. So if you're writing about a journey across snow, it'll be stylishly expressed, and you'll have clever ways and original ways of describing the cold and the snow that you'd avoid using cliches. It means that you're using clever allusions. So if you're writing a story about a journey to school, you might link it with Greek mythology or perhaps different events and characters from the Bible. So you would find clever, imaginative, inventive and creative ways of expressing and communicating your ideas in your story about the journey. What about appropriateness? Well, you would make sure that it's not informal, you're not using slang, but more than that, your narrative at grade 9 level may well be multimodal. What does that mean? It means that as well as using dialogue, you may be including snippets of letters. So if the journey is about going back to a childhood home, there may well be a letter from someone to someone, or maybe a letter in the past to remind that character about the past. There may be emails or different notes. There might be announcement if the journey is on a plane to hear, the different gates and boarding gates. So it would be a narrative made up of different types or modes of communication to add to the richness of your story about a journey. What about vocabulary? Well, vocabulary needs to be ambitious, and nothing shows ambitious a vocabulary more than nouns. So here are some nouns that you can see. So instead of saying that the ability to make good judgments was what saved her on the journey, you might say her sagacity came to the rescue. And you might say, instead of saying her selfless concern for others was what propelled her to make this difficult journey, you might say philanthropy was her motivation. So you're using those ambitious vocabulary, those ambitious nouns, to show that you really are a grade 9 candidate. What about engagement and structure? Well, a grade 9 candidate may well be typified in their writing that they use the opportunity of characters and events to really explore deeper, wider themes and issues. So they might be social themes and issues, moral, political themes and issues, ecological, practical, emotional, philosophical themes and issues. So although you're writing a story about a journey, you're also exploring ideas around betrayal and sacrifice and greed and marriage and what it means to have privilege. So you're taking the opportunity of a story and a narrative to explore different kinds of themes and issues. So that's the first part of the marking criteria, the content and organization, or CAVES. The next part is about VSPAG, or vocabulary, spelling, sentences, and punctuation and grammar. Here we're talking slightly more generally than just the specific story about the journey. Your vocabulary, however, first off, thinking about the journey, for the grade 9 may well be very carefully chosen in terms of a semantic field or a lexical set. So you may well, like in my example, have chosen a set of words all relating to something to really emphasize or exaggerate an aspect. Here I've used the idea of water to hyperbolically to really show this person who's very nervous, who's very home loving, doesn't like to be in unfamiliar places, and when she's taken to somewhere that's unfamiliar, she feels as if she's drowning. So you can see that all the different words are related with water. So for example, the next stage of the journey meant a tour across a market, a dizzying sea of colours where she was swamped by a deluge of overpowering sounds and sights. It would have been impossible to navigate the turbulent ocean of clashing shoppers and sellers if she had not had her decisive tour guide who helped her circumnavigate the perils of this uncharted place. So you can see here, for a grade 9 candidate, you're thinking very carefully, not just about individual words, but also about the set of words or the field of words altogether to give a specific effect. For example, someone who's very nervous and very home loving, being exposed to a different culture and feeling overwhelmed as if she's drowning in water. Then we're thinking about spelling. Your spelling should be very precise, particularly for polysyllabic words like anonymity or ubiquity. And then your sentences and grammar should be very varied, different sentence openers using ing or ed, participles, using adverbs, using prepositions, and also different sentence forms, using lists, using imperatives, using questions, but also trying to use conditionals, using sentences that have if and unless and when, to really show that as a grade 9 candidate, you can use all the different types of sentence forms and sentence openers and different clauses. Why is it so important to think about VSPAG? Well, it's worth 40% of your overall grade for this journey about a story about a journey. So out of the 40 marks, 60 marks are available if you use vocabulary really ambitiously and consciously, if you spell accurately, if you use the full range of sentence types and sentence forms and different types of clauses, then you can get those top marks for the second aspect of your marking criteria. Okay, let's talk about effective characterization. Your aim really is to make convincing characters that your readers can engage with, and they might engage positively with them, a character they respect, or they might engage negatively. You might want to have an antipathetic character who they really hate, but they engage and they enjoy hating them. So there are lots of different types of techniques that you can use, and I would call them walled. You use weather, you use appearance, relationships, location, dialogue, and symbolism to really get a clear sense of that character. You'd use pathetic fallacy, you'd use clues about their occupation, you'd use their own dialogue and dialect and even slang to create that sense of an individual character, and symbolic objects and situations, and even clothing, sartorial clothing symbolism to really give a sense of a convincing character. And here are two examples. So here, this is Jamie. He's about to make a journey across town to see his friend that's wrought with all sorts of problems. As the rain beat down, Jamie tried to run his hand through his tangled locks. He just slammed the door on his mother and was rummaging through the clothes on his floor for the dog tube bus pass that offered him freedom from family conflict. "Nah, mate," he offered to himself as he pictured the smile on Luke's face when he finally told him he was leaving the band. So you can see here, you've got the rain, you've got the argument. You can see that Jamie really is kind of a tempestuous, stormy kind of character. And you've got all his clothes on the floor as well. It's giving you lots of really clear indications of this character. And then his "nah, mate," you've got this sense of how young he is, perhaps how frivolous he is, making this trek across town to tell his friend Luke about leaving the band. So even in a few short lines, you've got an engagement using lots of different techniques to give you a sense of character. Here as well, another example, with the oppressive glare of the sun inspecting her every move, Molly found it impossible to keep her flawlessly straight hair in place, and she noticed damp patches on her immaculate white silk blouse. Although she appeared to be the office favourite, she couldn't help noticing the smug, sarcastic smirks of her co-workers every time she tried to speak. "Sorry," she'd often mumble, but her bright eyes were bright with envy and ambition. So you've got a sense of Molly's character. She feels self-conscious. She feels like the sun inspecting her, that people are always gazing on her. She tries to be perfect, flawless hair and an immaculate shirt, but she's still got damp patches and she has a pronounced stutter. So you've got this sense of someone who's incredibly insecure and who tries to do the right thing, and someone who's incredibly ambitious. So again, in a short line, using lots and short paragraph, using lots of different techniques, weather, appearance, relationships, location, dialogue, and symbolism to really create an effective and convincing character. Now, what about unreliable narrators? I would suggest that at grade 9, you try to use an unreliable narrator. Well, what is an unreliable narrator? Well, they're characters who are not completely accurate. They're not completely trustworthy because maybe they are of their emotional state. Maybe they're full of rage and envy, like Molly. Maybe they're intensely insecure. Maybe they're immature. Or maybe they have some kind of devious motivation that makes them untrustworthy or unreliable. There are three main types. There's the guilty party. So someone who's trying to pretend they're not really guilty. Someone who's mad, who perhaps is disturbing or grotesque in some way because their mind is twisted. And then you've got the innocent, inaccurate, someone who's recounting a sincere testimony, but because they're naive or inexperienced, it's inaccurate. So as a grade 9 candidate for grade 9 standard, you can try to tell your story through an unreliable narrator. And that again might be that creative, unique, and clever edge that makes your writing compelling. So finally, for the last part of our webinar, let's talk about the narrative arc. Now, you would have seen Story Mountain, where you've got the exposition and things get harder, you reach a peak, and then things start sort of resolving themselves. And there are 8 different points, I think, that would make your narrative arc really enriched and detailed and compelling to secure that grade 9. The first one is the narrative hook, to use perhaps dialogue or action or description or questions to really grab your reader's attention at the beginning. Then you're going to go into the exposition. You would describe or reveal characters as we've done with the characterization, through weather, through their location, through dialogue, through relationships, through all those different kinds of things, symbolism, you start giving a sense of the character, the people, and the setting, the places, and really giving clues of what's going to happen. You might include a flashback. You're building empathy or antipathy, but you're building engagement for with the main character. Then there's a trigger point or an interruption. Something kind of goes wrong, or something forces this character into an emotional or physical disruption, and they make a decision or a change. So sometimes it's someone they're sacked, perhaps they lose a job, they lose someone close to them, they lose home or leave home, some kind of trigger or interruption that forces them to make a decision. And then there's a quest, some kind of goal that they want to achieve, or some kind of journey that they want to make, which is followed by the rising action. So they're trying to achieve their goal, but there's surprises and obstacles, complication and crises and confusion along the way. And then there is the critical choice. At some point, they have a moral dilemma. Should they do the right thing and it's going to cost them, or do they do the wrong thing and it will be an advantage to them? So it's a moral kind of dilemma, a critical choice. And then there's a climax that builds that level of intensity, perhaps that moment of danger for the character before the falling action. So there are some solutions at the end, but the ending may well include more problems before you finish strongly. So what might that look like? So for this particular example, you may well have the narrative hook of a distress call. Mayday, mayday. I've set this in space where these astronauts are making a journey. They're trying to return home. So perhaps this narrative is shown and told through the eyes of the co-pilot. So this is an unreliable narrator. We doubt her state of mind, we doubt her judgment, we doubt her motivations, and we doubt her maturity. So through the exposition, which kind of goes back before the Mayday call, the co-pilot is describing her captain, her crew very unfavorably. She's really criticizing those people around her, and we're not sure exactly about what we think about her because she's being so harsh and critical. And then we're providing clues that maybe there are people on board, things aren't in place, and there's a higher level of magnesium that's been detected on board of this ship, and it's giving us clues about people that may be there who shouldn't be, foreshadowing an attack. There may well be also a flashback to the planet that these astronauts have left, that there was some kind of uneasy peace treaty. So again, it's showing, exploring ideas about peace and about diplomacy and dealing with people that you don't like, or people that you think are aggressive. So in that idea, you're building empathy for the captain and suspicion for the co-pilot, who is our unreliable narrator. And then we have some kind of trigger or interruption. The captain and the crew are sharing a joke. They're sharing a joke somehow, but she, the co-pilot, who's the unreliable narrator, is neglected. So then we suspect it. Is it a sexist taunt because she's the only woman? Is something going on that's kind of patriarchal bullying? And so we aren't sure whether we side with her or side with the crew. Then we have this quest, we have this goal. She wants to return. Perhaps it's because of a family commitment, perhaps because she realizes, there's a special date coming, she needs to get back. And we have this drive, her wanting to rush back quickly, and the crew wanting to take their time on their return. Then we have the rising action. We have lots of ideas about surprises as she enters the kitchen, and there's slime and things out of place. There's obstacles when she starts thinking, you know what, I'm not sure about the crew and the captain and the delays. I'm not sure what's going on. She's trying to send a distress signal and it doesn't quite get through. There's complication when she actually does see an alien. She realizes that her suspicions about people being on board are there, but it's an infant. And she's wondering if it's safe, and is it lost its parents? And there's a crisis that she has to decide whether it's friendly, whether she should tell the crew, whether she should talk to the captain about this person or not. And then we build up to the climax. There's this moral dilemma. Should she shoot the baby alien or should she not? Are these people that they've made a treaty with safe? Will they keep their end of the deal, or is she feeling a sense of threat? Then we have the idea that actually there is a takeover. It's not just one baby alien. There are lots of aliens. There's a conflict. There's an attack. There's all sorts of things going on that she doesn't know what happens. And then in trying to shoot an alien, she actually shoots her captain. But because she's an unreliable narrator, we don't know for sure whether this is on purpose or not. And then the falling action is that the distress signal does finally reach through. They know that people have heard them. They're able to get on their journey faster than they have been. But actually also the aliens are sending a distress signal. She's gearing up for another attack. There are other aliens who are coming, but we get a sense, whose side is she on? Has she planned this all along? And actually the aliens have always intended to take over the ship with the co-captain killing the captain or not. So this may well be the kind of journey story that you would write as a grade 9 candidate, because you're trying to include intrigue. You're trying to include complex ideas and wider issues. You're trying to include an unreliable narrator, and all of this is linked together and integrated. So I hope that this helps you to think about securing and mastering grade 9 for narrative writing and for your journey. So you're thinking that you are high level 4 for your mark scheme, which includes content and organization and technical accuracy. You're thinking very carefully about your characterization using all sorts of different techniques, as well as an unreliable narrator. And you're thinking carefully about your 8-point narrative arc, and remembering that 40% of this grade is all about technical accuracy. I hope that that's helped you, and I hope that you feel confident about the kinds of things you have to do in order to secure your grade 9. Thank you for joining me.